All right, everybody, this is the presentation for the ARC of Nebraska's ARC Advocates mobile app.
All right, so quick little background, even though I'm sure you guys all know what the ARC of Nebraska is. For over 60 years, the ARC of Nebraska has provided advocacy for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and for their families. Their methods of advocacy include, but are not limited to, directly assisting community members, providing access to additional resources for problems they can't solve directly, providing information for state and local government as advocates. We here at the team really respect that. We're glad we got paired with this group. We like to help people who help people. So quick little background on the people that helped us the most this semester. We have Edison, the executive director. He was very instrumental. He instilled the vision in identifying and describing overarching needs for the team, provided executive oversight for balancing goals and constraints, a lot of help. And then when we were getting down into what we needed to matter, Ashley Kerr, she was a primary correspondent in between when we were working weekly. She clarified more specific needs as relevant tools were developed, tested and audited functionalities upon implementation, and led formulation of interface styling and navigational architecture. So she was there along the way when we were doing all the nitty-gritty stuff.
All right, now we're going to take a moment to introduce ourselves and kind of the rest of the development team that might not be here. My name is Cameron Ramsey. I'm the squad lead and project manager for this project, and I'm a dual major in mathematics and computer science. Christian Burke, our development manager, he's a senior software engineering major. He's actually currently still giving demos and such at our virtual table, so sadly, he cannot make it to this presentation.
I'm Devin Steinier. I'm on the dev team, and I'm a computer engineering senior.
I'm William Pruitt. I'm a part of the dev team, and I am a senior in software engineering. And Louis Shaka is also in the virtual table as well, but he is a senior and a part of the dev team. And he's majoring in computer science.
And my name is Swayze Dalrymple. I'm also a senior, part of the dev team. I'm the one outlier. I'm an advertising major with a minor in software development.
So I'll dive into the problems that we were presented with and the solution that we came up with. So the many steps involved in community outreach are not always centralized or handled with the same tools. And this presented us with a few issues. For example, staff oversight required more labor than necessary. Record keeping and reviewing takes a long time. There's a small delay when connecting volunteers to our various community members. And there were several redundant communication channels used. So for our project and our solution that we came up with, we developed a mobile app that connects staff and volunteers to community members, and we worked to centralize the steps with oversight tools. So some of the tools that we used throughout this project, GitHub was kind of our online repository. It allowed for collaborative coding, and it helped us keep a record of all of our changes and versions of the app. Going along with this, there was a thing called ZenHub, which allowed us to create specific issues to keep track on a bulletin board, just kind of things that we were working on and who was doing what. We programmed this app using JavaScript under the React Native framework. This is a framework that helps us to develop for iOS and Android simultaneously. We used a tool called Expo. This is an app on our phones that allowed us to host our code on our computers and then scan a QR code and be able to have a live demo of our app without having to deploy it. So this made our changes viewable immediately without having to wait on any app stores to push updates. And then for our database side of things, we use Google Firebase. This allowed us to both handle account authentication and login features securely, And it also gave us a secure way to store all of our data. As you can see on the right here, we've got one of our user documents shown up.
So in terms of lessons learned, one of the big things that we learned was to make sure everybody on the team was on the same page. And one of the ways we did that was through communicating tasks to avoid redundant work. So usually during our meetings, unless we knew what each of us were working on, we usually communicate what we were planning on doing for that day. And then another big thing we did was to make sure if we had technical issues to reach out to different team members, because there was a good chance that somebody had basically a similar problem that could help out. Another big lesson learned was to obtain feedback early and often. And this kind of tied in with the Agile process. But basically, we would just have regular demos, which would allow sponsors to see our progress and give input wherever necessary. And then we would also have any suggested changes could be made sooner rather than later, because if there were any dependencies, we need to get those figured out. And then kind of just as a last quote by Steve Jobs, good artists borrow, great artists steal. So how this kind of applied to us was a lot of times we would install libraries or modules for functionality, and then we would figure out ways in order to implement those into our own project and development stack. And then also just on top of that, using public resources to solve our problems wherever we ran into a roadblock, things like Google and Stack Overflow and forums. So for the solution we ended up coming up with, we ended up developing a mobile app that was divided into 5 major sections. So the first was account handling, which contained staff, client, and volunteer accounts. We had a messaging system, which was divided into a direct and group messaging chat functionality. We had a scheduling system, which was divided into calendars, upcoming events, and notifications. And then we had case management, which was access to external resources, submit, assign, monitor, and close cases. And we had a search engine, which basically just filtered information for ease of use and oversight.
All right, that's kind of the overview of our project. We would really love to give you a demo, kind of explain things a little bit more. With an app of this scope that does so many different things, it's very hard to kind of explain in 10 minutes everything it does. So what I'd like to do is kind of just show you some user interface pictures, give you a little bit of the vibe of kind of how this works, how it flows. And if you want to know more, which I hope you do, we'd like to invite you to join our virtual table after this presentation. The first screen, you can see simple login screen. You can see we have a calendar here where you can choose different dates, and you have, you know, a list of different events with different information and such. This next screen, case searching, this seems a little bit simple, but in my opinion, it's one of the coolest parts of our app. It's one of the parts that allows for, you know, oversight, that allows things to actually be streamlined and help volunteers get connected with community members quicker, and helps staff oversee things a little bit faster. You're able to kind of search when somebody requests assistance for an issue. You can actually search based on where they're at. You can search based on what kind of issue they're having. In this case, it's an educationally related issue. And then you can say, hey, I'm going to find a volunteer who's in that location who knows about that specific issue. and get them in touch with this community member. Just a couple more screens. As you can see, we have a list of resources that you can go to. Again, also depending on what type of issue you're facing, it gives you resources automatically. If you say you're dealing with a certain issue, it gives you resources to deal with that issue. And as you can see here, this is something we definitely don't have a lot of time to go into, but you have the ability to create group chats and direct chats and have conversations. I really can't go on any longer, even though I'd like to, but I would like to say, if you want to know more, please visit our virtual booth. It's available on this website. We'd love to give you demos and answer any questions you might have. Our booth is going to be open until 4:45. That being said, thank you again for watching.
Awesome. Thank you to our presenters. If we could give them a virtual round of applause, either through the clap emote or just typing it out in chat, that would be great.